do the Eagles do that where they have so much gaps when they're lining up against teams? When you see that on tape, it just seems so obvious. Like this is where the other team's going to go with the ball.
There's always a theoretical weakness in a front, because all gaps do have to be covered by somebody. But there's what's called bubbles in fronts. I mean, teams will often run to bubbles, but every front has a theoretical weakness, and sometimes big runs normally happen. I remember, it's funny you asked this question. It brought back a conversation I had years ago with the scouting combine with Ron Rivera. He was the Carolina head coach at the time, and we started talking about run defense. And he said to me, almost all big runs occur in the NFL because guys play their gaps incorrectly. So more often than not, that's the case. Now, the other factor too, obviously, is guys do get blocked. So sometimes guys get moved out of a gap, and it may look like that gap, Jason, is not covered.
You felt like when Nolan Smith first came in the league that he had a chance to be a very good stack backer. Is that transition still possible?
That now, Eric, would be a hard transition. It would take time because it might not seem like a big deal, but when you're on the ball versus off the ball, you see the game totally differently. And your whole approach to what you're looking at is 1,000% different. I thought if he could have made the transition coming out, and by the way, I spoke to a number of coaches as well that thought that he should have made the transition. They did not see him as an edge pass rusher. And by the way, this year he's played 118 snaps. 50 of those snaps have come as a pass rusher. His pass rush win rate is only 11%. So he does not win as a pass rusher. I'd be surprised, although I never say a player is a bust or that he can't do something, because these are obviously high-level athletes, but he's now played a year and a half. He hasn't really shown any pass rush ability because there's no power to his game whatsoever. So I would be surprised if he suddenly became a really good pass rusher. Can it happen down the road? Possibly. I would think not, but I've been wrong, and I could be wrong on that.
And I just don't think Hurts has played well enough. So I guess my question to you, if I just break it down, do you think that he needs more time to kind of decipher if he can get better?
Every coordinator has a full plate and a full playbook. Every coordinator, can call anything and can coach anything. Some may not be head coaches, but they all can do the X's and O's of the game. The short answer to your question is yes. Hurts has limitations, and every coordinator that's been there has found out that he has limitations. And what that does, Anya, is it limits what they can call. That's where it comes into play. It limits what they can call. So when Kurt Warner says what he says, and I know Kurt very well, and we talk ball, not every week or anything, but, we talk a number of times, during the season and throughout the year. He's right about that, but that's a function of the quarterback. You have to play to your quarterback. You have to try to maximize what he does well and make sure you minimize his limitations. But if there are meaningful limitations, what that does is it impacts how you call a game, and it limits how you can call a game. And yes, we are at that point. Now, does that mean he'll never have a good game? Of course not. He's an NFL quarterback. He's not a bum. He's not a stiff. It's not like you have to put him out to pasture. But you do have to have a serious conversation about where going forward. And you know what? They're good enough throughout the team that they're going to win some games. Now, they may be stressful games for fans like you guys, and they may be white knuckle affairs, but they're not going to lose their next, what are they, 3-2?
Yeah.
So that means they have 12 games left. They're not going to go 0-12 in the next 12 games or 1-11. They're going to win some football games, but there's going to be some weeks it's a struggle.
Was that them stacking the box, or was that the O-line not clearing out like they normally did and creating those holes that we've seen the last 4 weeks?
I don't think they created the holes. I mean, this is a really good D line that they played against. One of the things that stands out when I watch the Eagles on offense, and I don't want to say it's totally limiting, but it is a factor in their run game, Carl, is Juergens is not a strong player. So what they do with him is they very rarely ask him to block, one-on-one base and drive blocks in their run game concepts. They feature him much more as an angle and movement blocker because he does not have the power to physically control big defensive tackles. For those of you who may or may not know, he went to Nebraska as a tight end and he built up to be an offensive lineman. So there's only so much weight he can have and so much strength he can ultimately have as far as what an offensive lineman is. So they use him in specific ways. And the Browns, they lined up a lot with one techniques and zero techniques and put it over Jurgens. And, that becomes a difficult block for him. So, does it limit some of the things you can do in the run game? It does. But the Browns did a really good job in the run game, and Barkley did not have a lot of room.
So how much can you really gather from the defensive performance on Sunday? Was it more of a product of the Browns being bad and a better quarterback would have had a better day, or did the defense actually look like they were, doing their assignment?
Eddie, I think you can look at it tactically what they did. You have to be careful about putting too much stock in because of who they were playing. But you can look at some tactical things, like I mentioned earlier, with how they decided to rush the quarterback. They increased some things tactically with their fronts and their stunts and using DeJean as a blitzer. So those are tactical things that you can hang your hat on a bit, and I'm sure we'll see more of those things. But you don't want to put too much stock, despite the fact they didn't give up a touchdown, an offensive touchdown. You don't want to look at that game and go, wow, the defense is ready to rock and roll, because quite frankly, Deshaun Watson is playing the worst quarterback of any quarterback in the league. He's not seeing things. He's not comfortable. Which is now only going to get worse because Amari Cooper's not there anymore. So, we'll see what happens. But, I always look at this stuff tactically as to what they did. But I wouldn't put too much stock into the fact that they held the Browns without a touchdown, because the Browns were not scoring many points anyway against anybody.
My question about the third down play, it's 3rd and 1. They decide to pass the ball. I was wondering if you could tell if that was something that was called as a run and they checked out of to a pass.
They were not in no huddle, so I'm looking at it right now. Jalen is talking to people. Okay, I'm looking at it right now. That's why I'm not looking at you guys. So it was not no huddle. So he saw something. For all we know, it was a called run and he checked to a pass. We don't know the answer to that. But my sense is, because the Browns have 1, 2, 3, 4, they have a 7-man front with a stacked player, and they've got nobody in the middle of the field. So it's basically a zero look. So maybe he thought that this was again, just giving you my opinion based on what the picture shows, he may have thought that this was a good look to throw the football. So they called that. He drops back, and they came with pressure, okay? I mean, basically, this was zero. This was zero with all-out pressure, and Barkley initially looked inside and did not get to Usakurumu in time. That's what happened on the play, Kev. So yeah. My sense is, without knowing 100%, that Hurts saw the front, saw no safety in the middle of the field, knew it was zero, knew that the run game was not going to work here because it's 7-man front, there's no gaps, and probably changed the play. That would be my guess. Now, I think Barkley made a mistake here. I think he should have immediately gone to the outside, because the whole middle, they had that taken care of numbers-wise.
My question was exactly what he just brought. I just wanted to know how his role was going to expand within the defense, if in fact, he put out a good performance.
Ganyu, I'll just amplify that in one sense. I think, and I'll be curious to see over the course of the next number of weeks, if there's some flexibility and versatility with Cooper DeJean and Gardner Johnson, because Gardner Johnson in his NFL career has played slot. And actually, he was a slot corner in college for a good part of his college career. And DeJean, my guess is he's probably practiced some at safety as well. And depending on the nature of the coverage call, they can be somewhat interchangeable depending on the nature of the call. So I'd be very curious to see as time goes on if those kinds of things happen, because I think both those guys have tremendous versatility.